Hello, today's daily reading comes from the book of the Apocrypha. We are reading from the book of Jasher, chapter 88, verses 30 through 65, and it reads as follows. And Joshua said, Why, O Lord, did you bring this people over the Jordan? What will I say after the Israelites have turned their backs against their enemies? Now, therefore, all the Canaanites, inhabitants of the land, will hear this thing, and surround us and cut off our name. And the Lord said to Joshua, Why do you fall upon your face? Rise, get up, for the Israelites have sinned and taken the accursed thing. I will no more be with them unless they destroy the accursed thing from among them. And Joshua rose up and assembled the people and brought the Urim by the order of the Lord. And the tribe of Judah was taken, and Achan the son of Carmi was taken. And Joshua said to Achan, Tell me, my son, what have you done? And Achan said, I saw among the spoil a fancy garment of Shinar, and 200 shekels of silver, and a wedge of gold of 50 shekels. Wait. I coveted them and took them, and behold, they are all hid in the earth in the midst of the tent. And Joshua sent men who went and took them from the tent of Achan, and they brought them to Joshua. And Joshua took Achan and these utensils, and his sons and daughters, and all belonging to him, and they brought them into the valley of Achor. And Joshua burned them there with fire. And all the Israelites stoned Achan with stones, and they raised over him a heap of stones. Therefore did he call that place the valley of Achor. So the Lord's anger was appeased, and Joshua afterward came to the city and fought against it. And the Lord said to Joshua, Fear not, neither be dismayed. Behold, I have given into your hand, her king and her people, and you will do unto them as you did to Jericho. And her king, only the spoil thereof and the cattle thereof will you take for a prey for yourselves. Lay an ambush for the city behind it. So Joshua did according to the word of the Lord, and he chose from among the sons of war 30,000 valiant men, and he sent them, and they lay in ambush for the city. And he commanded them, saying, When you will see us, we will flee before them with cunning, and they will pursue us. You will then rise out of the ambush and take the city. And they did so, and Joshua fought, and the men of the city went out toward Israel, not knowing that they were lying in ambush for them behind the city. And Joshua and all the Israelites feigned themselves wearied out before them, and they fled by the way of the wilderness with cunning. And the men of Ai gathered all the people who were in the city to pursue the Israelites, and they went out and were drawn away from the city. Not one remained, and they left the city open and pursued the Israelites. And those who were lying in ambush rose up out of their places and hastened to come to the city and took it and set it on fire. And the men of Ai turned back, and behold, the smoke of the city ascended to the skies, and they had no means of retreating either one way or the other. And all the men of Ai were in the midst of Israel, some on this side and some on that side, and they smote them so that not one of them remained. And the children of Israel took Molosh, king of Ai, alive, and they brought him to Joshua, and Joshua hanged him on a tree, and he died. And the children of Israel returned to the city after having burned it, and they smote all those that were in it with the edge of the sword. And the number of those that had fallen of the men of Ai, both men and women, was 12,000. Only the cattle and the spoil of the city they took to themselves, according to the word of the Lord to Joshua. And all the kings of this side, Jordan, all the kings of Canaan, heard of the evil which the children of Israel had done to Jericho and to Ai, and they gathered themselves together to fight against Israel. Only the inhabitants of Gibeon were greatly afraid of fighting against the Israelites, lest they should perish. So they acted cunningly, and they came to Joshua and to all Israel, and said unto them, We have come from a distant land. Now therefore make a covenant with us. And the inhabitants of Gibeon outwitted the children of Israel, and the children of Israel made a covenant with them, and they made peace with them, and the princes of the congregation swore unto them. But afterward the children of Israel knew that they were neighbors to them, and were dwelling among them. But the children of Israel slew them not, for they had sworn to them by the Lord, and they became hewers of wood and drawers of water. And Joshua said to them, Why did you deceive me to do this thing to us? And they answered him, saying, Because it was told to your servants all that you had done to all the kings of the Amorites, and we were greatly afraid of our lives, for our lives, and we did this thing. And Joshua appointed them on that day to hew wood and to draw water, and he divided them for slaves to all the tribes of Israel. And when and Dozendek king of Jerusalem, heard all that the children of Israel had done to Jericho and to Ai, sent to Hoham, king of Hebron, and to Param, king of Jarmuth, and to Japhiah, king of Lachish, and to Deber, king of Eglon, saying, Come up to me and help me, that we may smite the children of Israel and the inhabitants of Gibeon, who have made peace with the children of Israel. And they gathered themselves together, and the 5 kings of the Amorites went up with all their camps, a mighty people numerous as the sands of the seashore. And all these kings came and encamped before Gibeon, and they began to fight against the inhabitants of Gibeon. And all the men of Gibeon sent to Joshua, saying, Come up quickly to us and help us, for all the kings of the Amorites have gathered together to fight against us. And Joshua and all the fighting people went up from Gilgal, and Joshua came suddenly to them and smote these 5 kings with a great slaughter. And the Lord confounded them before the children of Israel, who smote them with a terrible slaughter in Gibeon, and pursued them along the way that goes up to Beth Horon unto Mekdah. And they fled from before the children of Israel. And while they were fleeing, the Lord sent upon them hailstones from heaven, and more of them died by the hailstones than by the slaughter of the children of Israel. And the children of Israel pursued them, and they still smote them in the road, going on and smiting them. And when they were smiting, the day was declining toward evening, and Joshua said in the sight of all the people, Sun, stand you still upon Gibeon, and you, moon, in the valley of Ajalon, until the nation will have revenged itself upon its enemies. And the Lord hearkened to the voice of Joshua, and the sun stood still in the midst of the heavens, and it stood still 36 moments, and the moon also stood still and hasted not to go down a whole day. And there was no day like that before it or after it, that the Lord hearkened to the voice of a man, for the Lord fought for Israel. Amen.